So the ICC, okay, the International Criminal Courts, is seeking arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders. And I'm going to refer to another guy I met at Rage Against the War Machine, Dave DeCamp from antiwar.com. And you can see the ICC seeks arrest warrants for Israeli and Hamas leaders. On Monday, the International Criminal Court announced it was seeking arrest warrants for senior Israeli and Hamas leaders for war crimes and crimes against humanity related to the October 7th Hamas attacks on southern Israel and the relentless Israeli bombing campaign and starvation blockade on Gaza that has followed. The only thing he should have put in there, Mr. David Camp, I don't ever mean to correct you in your work, was the Hamas and resistant groups attacks, because there was other people who were involved in that. It wasn't just Hamas. And that's something that I think that Patrick Henningsen is doing really well. The other day he was mentioning those other groups because there are offshoots. It's not just Hamas. And I think that's important to point out. And I don't mean to stop my reading of the article and not get into the crux of things, but it's important to point out because it's not just one particular group. It's a resistance as a whole, that this is a movement by the Palestinian people that, regardless of Hamas taking the lead, Matt, because they can be looked at a certain way, they have no choice. It's either live or die, be ethnically cleansed or fight back, or whatever the case may be. There are other groups there. This isn't just about a radical group making an isolation move, a move that was by itself, right? It was a movement as a whole. Your thoughts of that?
Well, just the idea that we're going to pinpoint this one group and paint this picture of radicalization, radical action, where it's like resisting an occupation. When did that even just that concept alone, forget Palestine, Israel, just the idea that a group is going to resist occupation, that is this radical thing. Of course, there's going to be different factions doing it. There's different ways to do it. You can criticize each type of way. Oh, you should have done it more like this or should have done it more like that. Yeah. But they don't want us having those conversations. They want to pin it all to this extreme group, which was funded by Israel, by the way. They leave that part out. Yes. But putting that aside, they try to simplify. Of course, they try to simplify, make this one-dimensional. So I do, appreciate Patrick Henningsen's more thoughtful reporting on that, because it is important that we see all the layers involved.
Well, and to give credit, once again, Fiorella with Vanessa Beeley, Eva Bartlett, they were saying that from the get-go, right? Like Vanessa and Eva Bartlett especially. They were like, this is a resistant group. The Gray Zone, give that credit, eventually followed up to as well, because they did some work. Dan Cohen did an amazing film with Max Blumenthal when they went to Gaza in 2014. So they followed up and stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I'm glad that people are coming to the forefront. I heard some people saying that the other day. I did ask Mark Sloboda that question when he was on Jimmy Dore, when I had him on Jimmy Dore. And he goes, yeah, if you want to say that, yada, yada, yada. Hamas is still the major faction, though, too, as well. So I want to point out what he was kind of stating, that they're still the group. They have a political wing that's still in the works, trying to work things out. So when we hear about these Hamas leaders, there is in Qatar, political faction, and it is kind of making out deals. And what are your initial thoughts? I'm going to read this really quickly, this one paragraph and the bullet points. And I want your initial thoughts, but I want you to focus on the fact that, what do you think about the ICC issuing warrants for both Israel and Hamas leaders and stuff? But let me read this really point, and then you point it out, because it's something that's really important, because a lot of people feel like, well, why are they issuing warrants out for Hamas? You just said so yourself. How do we criticize people who are fighting back, who are backed into the corner, who are against the gun, who so much more people have been killed in prison, and they're living in an open-air prison, right? So let me read this real quick. Right. Karim Khan, the ICC's chief prosecutor, said his office was seeking warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Bibi Netanyahu and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. In a statement, Khan alleged the Israeli leaders were responsible for the following crimes: starvation of civilians as a method of warfare and as a crime. True. Willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health contrary or cruel treatment as a war crime, willful killing or murder as a war crime, intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population as a war crime, extermination or murder, including in the context of death caused by starvation, as a crime against humanity, persecution as a crime against humanity, other inhumane acts as a crime against humanity. Now, I asked you that question because, once again, these things that they mention, only one side has done that, Matt. Why is it even like a thought process to issue arrest warrants at the same time. It's almost saying as if both sides are equal. Both sides have had equal footing on this. Both sides have had equal suffering. So my thought process right away was, you go, please go ahead.
No. So to me, this seems very calculated by the ICC. They have to, the verbiage is very, very intentional.
Okay.
This, when I'm reading this, it seems to me that this is actually directed at Israel fully. You have to add in Hamas to kind of balance out the verbiage is important because because you can't qualify one without the other. If you're going, you're going to get a rebuttal from this. That the Israel media is going to go all out against this, and so you have to acknowledge Hamas in there. I think it was a good move, but when you look at right at that first statement, you're talking about these crimes against Israel, right? This is specific. This part is specific.
Yeah.
So they're doing the arrest warrant for both, but they're specifying Israel's crimes in here, and I like that. And also, I also noticed this. This is something that sticks out to me. We're talking about crimes against humanity. So the last three on there, they're very particular to these actions you can't do on this planet in any way, shape, or form.
In any capacity.
War or peace. You can't do this. The rest of it, they're using the verbiage war crime, but I also would attest that that's a very careful language. And if you really were to say, to go behind the curtain, I'm sure if you were a fly on the wall in this meeting, they would probably want to put crime against humanity on every single one of those. So again, I think they're being very deliberate, very careful about the language, but they got it on record and they've specified Israel's crimes on record right here. And I do think it's a good move. And now you have to respond to all of it. If you're on the IDF, if you're in Israel media, you have to respond to all of it. Of course they won't. They're only going to pick and choose.
Do you think it's a pro or a con that they put Hamas on that same kind of line as far as arrest warrants for both? And what do you think what move the Hamas leaders should pull? I mean, if I would call their bluff, I'm like, okay, yeah, you can arrest me for crimes against humanity if you arrest Bibi Netanyahu.
That's why I think it's a good thing they did that, because it does put them in a power position to say, okay, you want to take this seriously, then go ahead and take it seriously over here and do both. So they're putting everything out on the table. And if you want to come get Hamas, you got to get it because they're both listed here. The warrants are for both. So come and get us. Come and get everyone.
You think it was a political move the way it was written, the way it was issued? Like, he's got that. Look at that. Definitely. And that's a good thing too, though. I mean, because listen, at the end of the day, and this is the one thing me and Fiorello would fight about all the time. The results, principal results. At the end of the day, the results are the results. We get the results we want, so be it. No. The way you get the results are important, right? So there's a little bit of a column A and column B there. In this particular situation, look, I'm throwing anything at the wall, any spaghetti at the wall, and hoping it sticks. Let's listen to the ICC prosecutor's explanation and what he has said as we see these warrants issued for the Hamas leaders and the leaders of Israel. Take a listen and take a watch at this.
I can also confirm today
Volume.
that I have reasonable grounds to believe,
Got it.
basis of evidence collected and examined by my office, that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Minister of Defense Yoav Gallant bear criminal responsibility for the following international crimes committed on the territory of the State of Palestine from at least the 8th of October 2023. The crimes include starvation of civilians as a method of warfare, willfully causing great suffering, serious injury to body or health or cruel treatment, willful killing or murder, and intentionally directing attacks against a civilian population, as well as crimes against humanity of extermination and or murder, persecution, and allegations of crimes of committing other inhumane acts. It's alleged that these crimes were committed in the context of the ongoing armed conflict and as part of a widespread and systematic attack against the civilian population of Gaza, pursuant to a state policy. Unfortunately, these crimes continue to this day. My office submits that these individuals, through a common plan, have systematically deprived the civilian population of Gaza of objects indispensable to human survival. We have reached that conclusion based upon interviews with survivors, many eyewitnesses, experts, from satellite imagery, statements from Israeli officials, including the 2 individuals subject to the present application.
And a special thank you, by the way, to Italian Stallion for that second super chat, who said, by the way, yeah, he knows. He loves the way I annoy Fee, right? really quickly. Oh, I know. It was my way of showing I still follow you. I love how you used to annoy Fee, and I know you still follow me because nobody's got the name Italian Stallion like the Italian Stallion. So thank you for always following me, Paisan. He did mention, though, going back to the ICC, their response and their decision they've addressed. He did kind of put Gaza on the Hamas on the same level. I think we've already discussed that. But if you have anything else to say about that particular speech, it was pretty much everything we read. But
everything we read, but I'll add in that he did before he started the list of crimes. He says at least from October 8th, and I thought that was interesting to note because he's leaving it open to how far back do these crimes go beyond that. And again, I go back to what we said. Is this political? Yes, and I think it is a good thing to do. You have to get the verbiage right.
Yeah,
you have to put everything out there. But there's no door that's been shut. I think that's the main thing. He's not shut the door and said this part didn't happen. This happened, but he left every door open.
Yes,
and put it on paper. It's official. It's in the international court documents. It's official. You can't undo that. So that's happened. And I think that's an incredible milestone to have achieved.
All right. Here's what I'm writing down because I want to remember this. Okay, fine. Yeah, right. I get it. But to me, the reason why he's kind of accusing Hamas almost on the same level is because that was the rhetoric that was forced by the United States and Israel. It was like the same rhetoric when we heard about Assad. Assad is a brutal dictator, but they forced you to say that when a lot of people didn't understand anything about Assad, what he has done for his people in Syria, and how wrong of it is to say that. It's once again the United States being able to take any type of responsibility for themselves and act like they're the ones fighting for human decency and human rights and stuff. But these guys, Hamas, is once again they're murderers. And they forced this rhetoric. It's like they almost forced the same decision. And I'm so sorry, even as we sit here today, the way I felt back then, right? And this is the thing. When we used to say, no, the United States and the U.S. is Israel and the United States is overplaying their card. They're over, what's the word? Exaggerating what happened on October 7th. There was no proof of systemic rape.
Right.
We did see a lot of Israeli soldiers from helicopters mowing down people at that festival, so they were responsible for a lot of their own deaths. They even have policy in place, the Hannibal, whatever it's called, doctrine that's in place. They even so it's on paper that they do this. They were beheading babies, all this other stuff. All this rhetoric seems that they have put in beforehand is why the ICC is in a position like, well, if we just single out Israel for their war crimes, we won't get anywhere. We have to at least acknowledge the rhetoric and the narrative that the West put out so we can get something from it, right? I mean, so there is something, I think, negative about that, the fact that they're both kind of labeled on equal level Hamas leaders in Israel. And let's not forget, before October 7th, there was a lot of shit fucking Israel's done. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course. To merit some type of response from Hamas or anybody else.
Of course. This is still a good thing. I think that getting the attention of everyone, of the whole world's watching this. The whole world's watching. Yeah. This is the world against Netanyahu right now. We're seeing that. So to have this on paper, look, I get what you're saying. I get like, okay, there's another way you could
this a little bit closer.
Okay. There's another way we could do this where we just say, no, F all of your propaganda about October 7th. We've already dismantled all that. We don't need to go back there. I get that. But at the same time, this gets everyone's attention. People that are still caught up on that, they can look at this and see you can't ignore that Israel's crimes are being laid out one by one right here. You can't ignore that. Netanyahu is forced to have to go on all these shows now
Yeah.
Are we gonna, if we can get to that part?
Well, let's get to
Okay.
that. Let's go right into Netanyahu. But ladies and gentlemen, I agree with Matt that it is a good thing that this is happening, and even if it was politically written this way to make sure that we can get some type of movement towards a ceasefire and some form of accountability, which we'll never get because we'll show why that will never happen. Anyways, if you see out there anybody, ladies and gentlemen, anyone else who's been talking about the fact that they're trying to put these two, Hamas and Israel, on the same level, and anybody's talking about that in particular, because I think it's important to at least acknowledge that that's why we are here where we're at, because Israel and the United States and the West will always use the media to overplay their cards, just like they're doing in Russia, Ukraine. They did the same thing here. So this is almost like when they say Assad is a brutal dictator, but this is the same thing, I think, in certain ways. So we at least have to point that out. So in the future, when it does happen, because people, you know, when I was saying that Israel was overplaying their card, you know what my good friend told me, who's not my friend at this point. He's still my friend. I love him, but we're not talking since this whole situation happened. You sound like a Holocaust denier. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not being a Holocaust denier. I'm saying that they're going to overplay their card, so therefore they can manufacture consent for their brutal response to what happened on that day. Please go ahead, buddy.
No, I have to make this comparison because you this whole thing about unfriending people. This totally reminds me of COVID, and I think that it's the same thing you have to do to get people's attention, because a lot of people lost friends and family and were uninvited to Thanksgivings and Christmases. And the only way to get that conversation started is you had to start with, look, we know that we had to get this thing out there. It helped a lot of people, but here's some of the damage it did. Here are some, so you have to qualify that. I think over time, I think history will tell a different story. We can drop those qualifications later. Just like I think here, you can once we look back, we go, oh, the story they told about Hamas is not true. But at the time, the only way you get people's attention is you have to give them a little bit. Yeah. We know that we know this. However, this. It's how you start the conversation. I think it's important.
The funny thing about it is, and this is why I think our shows will be successful once we fight through this censorship. And I think it's going to happen because I think everybody's overplaying their cards. There's both sides that are getting demonetized. I think even people in the middle are like, enough with the censorship, right? Now we have the TikTok bill that doesn't even mention TikTok, or it doesn't even mention ByteDance, and yet it's the protecting us from foreign adversaries. I think people understand that the left or the right both will use hate speech, foreign adversaries, terrorists as just a way to censor you more, and people are fed up across the board. But this is the reason why I think we'll be successful. Getting back to my why, because the people on COVID, right, that were with us are now on the opposite side. Like right now, when it comes to Israel, the left, the United States American left on COVID shit their bed, right? Like they were terrible, and we were like, hey, and now we're doing the same thing to the right, but here we are being consistent with the truth, being consistent with our views, not playing any team sports. That's why you got to trust us, baby. So thank you all who are here today, now in the beginning, baby. We'll remember this time because we're going to constantly be consistent with our views, because that's what we need from the fucking news. Go ahead.
Absolutely. It's all about non-tribal approach to all of this, guys. That's why we do our show, The Homeless Left, a non-tribal approach to news, because it's a non-tribal approach to life. Anytime they hit us with the next story, we're looking at it without any blinders on, and we're applying that same principle, as Basa just said. That's exactly what we have to do every time. So yes, exactly. Thank you guys for being with us consistently on each issue, whether it's COVID, whether it's Ukraine, whether it's now the occupation.
And that's the hard avenue to go, because you play team sports, forget about it. Everybody's there. If I would have just became a right winger, like fucking Anomaly, like being a pro-Trump guy, and it took him a while before he was even pro-Trump, I was like, nah, all right, Trump's got some better views than fucking Biden and the Democrats, but he's still Donald Trump. He's got a lot of baggage and bullshit he's bringing with him. You know what I'm saying? Had I just jumped into the anti-socialist crowd as a right winger who, was for election integrity now, and I could have joined that clan, forget about it. Things would have been so much more easier for me. But as soon as I came back and saying, nah, Brazil was legit, we have to understand why it was legit. That doesn't mean I love Lula, but there's something going on there, and he's not Joe Biden, and I think you got to understand. Oh, everybody started hating me because I refused to play team sports. And in that issue, everybody wanted to live vicariously through Brazil because they felt they were screwed at 2020. And I just debated that 2020 was bullshit. Yeah. But that's when it's easy to play team sports. That's when the shkarol comes. It's harder when you're just not in any freaking corner and not on any team, because Americans are programmed to be tribal, are programmed to play team sports.
You know, I just got this idea about you do this election integrity stuff, and like it's so important that we use that. I think that's where you've gotten so good at this, Craig, is that you take this election integrity, you apply it to every situation. You don't give a crap who wins, who loses.
Yeah.
It's about the principle. Yeah. And if you get used to that, if you guys condition yourselves to do that, then you can do that everywhere without even thinking about it. It'll become second nature. Yeah. It's like, what, you want Trump to win? You want, but no, I don't give a crap.
Yeah.
I'm about consistency, principle, transparency. Yeah. We apply it to everything.
Yeah. Oh, you want Trump to win? I remember I couldn't talk about Epstein at the Bernie diners.
Yeah.
At the Bernie Sanders diner, which was not a real diner. It was just an organizing hub for us. But I couldn't talk about Epstein, somebody told me there, because it's helping Donald Trump. Get the F out of here. Guys, we're going to play this next video by Bibi Netanyahu. See, this is a Stream Deck, and I am coming to give this to Jamie in D.C. when I see him. Jamie, I want on here. I want a bozo horn, like the I want anything else. I mean, what was it called? The No Agenda podcast uses a bell every time they hear bullshit or a buzzword. Watch for yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, how many times Bibi Netanyahu tells a lie, or not so much just a lie, a propaganda lie, so that he can manufacture consent for what Israel is doing, what Israel has done, and what Israel is going to continue to do. Do you have something to say, Jamie? Or do you want to go right into the video?
Yeah, you better be careful what you ask for, because I'm going to load that thing up with sound effects.
Bro, this is yours to play with. You got 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 buttons, and I think there's 3 pages of 15
you can
buttons.
do pages.
That's 45 buttons. I want a bozo horn.
There will be 45 buttons.
I want all the great shit, because our politicians, our leaders, are, especially in the West, including this guy right here, Bibi Netanyahu, like my boy talked about, is the one who funded, supported, and if you listen to Ron Paul, even created Hamas, and has no reason or no right to say what he's going to say. They are so full of cow dung that we need to point it out, and it will be a little bit more fun and energetic if we get some buttons. But you count, ladies and gentlemen, or tell us in the chat what your favorite bullshit propaganda line Bibi Netanyahu uses right here, as he has been charged and an arrest warrant has been issued by the ICC. And we will also point out the bullshit of the ICC as we go along too as well. Go ahead, Jamie.
Oh, I'm just saying, I'm going to fill that thing up. It's got 45 buttons. There will be 46 sound bites, and we're going to have to figure out what not to include.
All right, let's get into Netanyahu's speeches.
I guarantee you.
We're going long in the first segment. We're a long show today.
The outrageous decision by the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, to seek arrest warrants against the democratically elected leaders of Israel is a moral outrage of historic proportions. It will cast an everlasting mark of shame on the international court. Israel is waging a just war against Hamas, a genocidal terrorist organization that perpetrated the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. Hamas massacred 1,200 Jews, raped Jewish women, burned Jewish babies, took hundreds hostage. Now, in the face of these horrors, Mr. Khan creates a twisted and false moral equivalence between the leaders of Israel and the henchmen of Hamas. This is like creating a moral equivalence after September 11th between President Bush and Osama bin Laden, or during World War II between FDR and Hitler. What a travesty of justice. What a disgrace. The prosecutor's absurd charges against me and Israel's defense minister are merely an attempt to deny Israel the basic right of self-defense. And I assure you of one thing, this attempt will utterly fail. 80 years ago, the Jewish people were totally defenseless against our enemies. Those days are over. Now the Jewish people have a state, and we have an army to defend our state. Notwithstanding the blood libels Mr. Khan has leveled, Israel will continue to wage this war in full compliance with international law. We will continue to take unprecedented measures to get innocent civilians out of harm's way and to ensure that humanitarian assistance reaches those in need in Gaza.
Can we stop?
Mr. Khan also sets a dangerous...
All right, get us on the screen over here. Oh, I got to, hold on. Man, I don't even have enough room to write this stuff down. How many times would you have been hitting Jamie? How many times did you count? I got the bozo horn for every single time he told a propaganda lie or propaganda. I got it at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I got 9 times. Do you have a number?
I wasn't counting.
Let me tell you what they were. The democratically elected was the first one. I mean, pointing that out, that democratically elected or not, what does that got to do with anything? I mean, once again, he's trying to say that they're the only democracy in the Middle East. This is something that RFK won't shut the F about. Who, if I run into this weekend, by the way, I reached out to his communications person, Stephanie Spheres, and I haven't heard back again. I don't know if I'll get an interview, but that's what you get when you ask tough questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you, so, you know, hopefully I will, but it's the only democratically elected, it's the only democracy in the Middle East. So that was one horn. This just war against this terrorist group he talked about. Once again, the Holocaust. This has been the most deaths since the Holocaust. This has been the worst times. That's 3. Raped women. Once again, it's been disproved, if that's a word there, or unproven or whatever. It's been shown that it was a full of shit. There was no signs of systemic rape whatsoever. That doesn't mean that somebody wasn't raped. I'm not saying that, Matt, but there was no proof that there was systemic rape.
What we know is that there is no legitimate source coming forward that has a legitimate story of any rape happening.
Yeah.
And every story has been proven false.
Yes.
That's what we know.
Then we got number 5, burn babies, again, doing the whole burn babies, the incubators, and the incubator baby story from Iraq. We live.
Yeah.
The henchmen, right? He talked about the henchmen.
Yeah.
Not recognizing it as a people, as a government, especially when you're the ones who funded and supported that government yourself. You're lying. You're the one who says we have to support Hamas. They're a government. End of story. Then he used history, the FDR, the George Bush, and he used that there. There was another one. So that was number 7. Then we have the self-defense, saying that this is all about self-defense. I don't think this is self-defense at this point, Matt. Right now. Okay. Then I got full compliance. Then he said about full compliance with international law. No, you haven't been in compliance. You've been freaking killing innocent people on a regular basis.
No.
And I couldn't even see the innocence. I can't even see the last part. But I mean, it was whistle after whistle, horn, bell, whatever. Please take it away.
I can't count good job trying to count these, but honestly, Pasta, this guy doesn't stop lying. I'm gonna add this too, because you're talking about that last one. That one gets me so angry because you're talking about following
full compliance.
Full compliance. Yet we know that 24 hours since this ICC issued the arrest warrant, he's gone full blown into the West Bank. In Jenin, he's gone in and destroyed roads immediately. They're bulldozing roads, and that's in West Bank,
the West Bank, where Hamas ain't even there.
So you want to talk about following any sort of rules of any sort? It's like a big FU to the whole system. You could turn around, get on TV, and say this crap. It's utterly disgusting. But I will say this, Craig. I will say that if he told one truth, he did say this will cast eternal shame upon Israel, and that part I think is kind of true. That part we got the shame. But not on ICC, on Netanyahu and everything you've been doing. So the shame, he just got that misdirected. But there's definitely some shame being casted. And then I will say the George Bush comparison. That's always a good thing when people. And I think we had the same thing from Lindsey Graham, bringing up the past to justify the present. As look at this past comparison. Getting us to think about 9/11 only works against Netanyahu. So I have to say, even though that was a BS lie, he actually makes us think, well, why didn't George W. Bush ever get charged for any war crimes in 9/11? Thank you for reminding us, BB, because now I'm thinking about that again. Yeah.
And Barack Obama didn't do it because he had his own crimes against humanity that he wanted to make sure that he put into play.
Because practicing law, we like to look forward, not behind us.
Yeah.
So
we got to look forward.
We got to look forward.
Yeah. Dude, remember the lock her up for Donald Trump stuff?
Yeah.
He didn't lock her up.
No.
And she's still out there doing some crazy shit, right? Instead, that was the one part. There was several times I thought he was extending an olive branch. That was Donald Trump to other people. That's right when he got in office. That's when we didn't hear so much of the radical left like we hear right now. Guys, if you're watching over on Rumble right now, we got about 40 people hanging on out. Do us a favor. Hit that join button. You can become a member for free. You don't have to spend any money, any scuttle. You can come on in and join the community. The more you join the community, the more you help out the algorithm, the more you help us out, the more views we get, the more you help us grow. So you don't even have to spend a dime. All you have to do is hit that button. I'm here with the homeless left guy, Matt Weinglass. I am Craig Pasta Jardula. Jamie Cheese Slices on the ones and twos. We are talking about the ICC issuing arrest warrants for Israeli President Bibi Netanyahu and Hamas leaders as well. So I do have a few more things in the doc that I want to talk about really quickly. Bernie Sanders. So what do they do right here? They're going to, I mean, listen, if there's ever been a bigger capitulator in our lifetime than Bernie Sanders, let us know, right? You could blame this guy for so much stuff, starting a movement and then just walking away from it. I don't think we'd be here today. I don't know if you were there, but I wouldn't have been doing what I'm doing today if it wasn't for Bernie Sanders and that whole movement. Things had changed from 2016 to 2020. I further moved along and started supporting Tulsi Gabbard, but that took a lot of guts at that point because it was kind of like a divorce from Bernie Sanders. Not just Bernie Sanders, the person, but the whole movement and the people I worked with and got in the streets with for so long. But Bernie Sanders has really been a cuck. But when Bernie Sanders was running, he was still the compromise candidate. He sucked on foreign policy. I mean, he was better than most, but he sucked. The same way he sucked on Israel-Palestine, and the same way he regurgitates and repeats the Hamas shit. Look at him using this ICC prosecutor situation to go after Putin. And that was the whole thing. The ICC issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. So we know that they're not, always on point, that they could be full of shit as far as I'm concerned. Once again, Vladimir Putin tried for 8 years to end that war, and that's why he went in there. He didn't go in there to start a war. He went in there to end the war. There was already 14,000 civilians killed in the Donbass by the Azov battalions, that's who we are. They're not, all Ukrainians are not Nazis, but there are Nazis in Ukraine, and that's the ones who've been issued the weapons to go and kill ethnic-speaking Russians in the Donbass. So that's my personal belief. But once again, the ICC is not going to always get it right for some people. Sometimes they will. But Bernie Sanders using this moment to go after fucking Putin, which is bullshit. Because at this moment right now, we need more people speaking out against the Ukraine-Russia war right now and stop funding this whole genocide that's going on. This was a proxy war. But look what he says. The ICC prosecutor is right to issue arrest warrants for political leaders who engage in war crimes. The global community must uphold international law. Without these standards of decency and morality, the planet may rapidly descend into anarchy, never-ending wars, and barbarianism. Bernie Sanders, where the hell are you at? You represent the country that causes more death and destruction than any country out there. Forget about it. In the history of countries, right? I mean, American bombs kill more people. We have 1,000 bases all over the globe. It's just the height of hypocrisy. And I'll give you the first comment, but let me read a little bit for you real quick. The ICC prosecutor is right. In the last several years, the International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for political leaders who violate international law, engage in war and crimes against humanity. Here we go. That includes Russian President Vladimir Putin, whose illegal invasion of Ukraine initiated the most destructive war in Europe since World War II. Doesn't talk about what happened in 2014. Doesn't talk about the fact that we funded and armed Nazis. Doesn't talk about our responsibility. And that's all I want to hear, Matt, is us taking accountability. I wish our leaders who were supposed to be on our side would take accountability for what's happening in Russia, Ukraine. Please go right ahead.
We have to stop getting emotional about Bernie Sanders every time he throws us a bone about something little bit here, little bit there that is right on point. This is obviously not on point, but we get so upset because we're like, how can you be for the people? How can you be anti-war? How can you be all these things? You clearly aren't. You have your own. You have people in the crowd at your own rallies arrested, Code Pink people arrested for putting up your own tweets about let's go for diplomacy with Ukraine, Russia, and you have them arrested. So your stance on war, your stance on against Netanyahu, it's very showy. And of course he took the opportunity to go after Putin.
But yeah,
of course he did. We have to stop giving him any attention because all he's done, and you said earlier, Paz, about the revolution, he just stopped in the middle of it and didn't finish it. He stopped doing the thing he was supposed to do. I'm thinking, looking back, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Rile up a bunch of people. That wasn't the plan. Get everybody in the street, call for our revolution, and then leave them all over here. Is that
sheep herding
a little bit of Pied Piper, a little bit of something where
which came first, the chicken or the egg? That's Matt Weinglass out there throwing it out there. A lot of people feel the same way, Matt.
Hey,
that he did exactly what he was supposed to do.
That was what he was supposed to do.
I don't know. I think Jane getting threatened kind of moved him a little bit.
I'll give you that. I think that somewhere near the end of the 2016 run was when he got captured. I think there was something authentic about the beginning of it.
Mhm.
But once we saw all of the duplicity of Hillary's campaign, what a moment that would have been. What a moment it would have been for him to say, what is going on in these states? What are you doing? How are you counting these super delegates? What the hell is going on? And have those people in that room during that DNC of 2016 get up with them and say, no, we demand that justice is served.
I'll give you one better.
We knew, yeah.
2016, he also had the Bernie Sanders lawsuit, the election lawsuit, right then and there. And this is something that I firmly believe he could have set election integrity straight, coming from the left. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of right-wingers would have fucking bought into it then, right? Like a lot of independent people like, hey, listen, you know, because they were like, all right, look what he's doing. And it was against Hillary right then and there, because it was more than just the primaries, right? Your in-party primaries, where a lot of monkey business goes on, even more worse than the general election. But the fact is, right then and there, he could have made sure that we had a true democracy. He should have left. He should have gone to the Green Party and had Jill Stein, who was willing to step aside. That was the one time I really did appreciate what Jill Stein was doing. And no, I'm not supporting her now. But she was willing to step aside, be the vice president, let him be the president. He could have gone into that lawsuit, right, and really straightened out election integrity and made sure it was the grassroots movements. That's what you would be supporting. When you support election integrity, you're not supporting as much as the thing you were supporting the most. Let me get it right, is the grassroots movement. Because if it's one person, one vote, the people are going to start voting for their own interests. The numbers they're showing you are hocus pocus. They ain't real, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. Okay, but instead of playing team sports, if Bernie Sanders would have just said, you know what, I got cheated, I have to represent the people, and that lawsuit, Jared Beck, he had the DNC pretty much admitting guilt. He had the DNC go, you know what, if we wanted to, technically we can go into the back room full of cigar smoke and pick whoever we want. He had them. Can you imagine if Bernie Sanders was a part of that? And said, look what the DNC just said. The Democratic Party says they don't have to honor a democracy. That doesn't make any. I mean, we had it right there. Instead, he walked away and he told people, brothers and sisters, you need to support Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
I want to read the rest of this really quickly, too, as well, because at the very end, we have to do its due diligence. It says, after World War II, Yahya Sinwar, I hope I say his name right. How do you say that? Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader who started the horrific war in Gaza by launching a terrorist attack against Israel, which killed 1,200 innocent men, women, and children, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who, in response, has waged an unprecedented war of destruction against the entire Palestinian people, which has killed or injured over 5% of the population. You see how he's kind of sugarcoating it too, though? Once again, who started the war? Bernie Sanders, you know damn well that war was not started on October 7th. And anybody out there who keeps sticking to that, oh, this war started on October 7th. No, this has been going on for a long time, Matt.
You know, it sounds like he's campaigning for Trump right now, because this is exactly what Trump sounds like.
Yes.
Like, hey, this horrible thing happened, but maybe you guys, maybe we should, reconsider the approach to getting back at these horrible terrorists who, if I was in office, wouldn't have happened in the first place. So, it's like, Bernie, you might, we don't need to listen to you anymore. Everything, I mean, look, the 67 billion that was passed, that was weapons to not just Israel, it was to Ukraine. Bernie's going up there. This was very recently. He goes up there. He says, yes, we need to not be funding any more genocide, but let's at least get the money over to Ukraine and continue this proxy war. So nothing he says he's always bringing it back to Putin. Yeah. He's always diminishing what's actually happening in Gaza. And I'm sick of people sending me links saying, look, Bernie just said something really nice about the Palestinians. He just said something really heartfelt. So that does damage.
He's half stepping it the way he did. Yeah. Listen, all right. So let me read this last paragraph, and I have a question for you, Bernie Sanders. The ICC prosecutor is right to take these actions. These arrest warrants may or may not be carried out, but it is imperative that the global community uphold international law. Without these standards of decency and morality, this planet may rapidly descend into anarchy, never-ending wars, and barbarism. That's the thing he said. It was condensed on his tweet. Okay. So, Bernie Sanders, are you ready to resign your position as senator and hold yourself liable for what you did in Kosovo? Because you did promote and you stood by and you supported the genocide that took place. And you know what he did then, too, as well on the floor? Same half-stepping bullshit thing. He was like, we need to have discussions. We can't just send money off. This is terrible. We got to have it on the floor before. It must be the last thing we do is war. But we do, but still go ahead with your plan. Like this is fucking just, I don't want to say typical, but Bernie Sanders does this a lot, often.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm reminded about the COVID CARES Act. What a great speech that was. This is a horrible. We got to do this big upward transfer of wealth. The $5 trillion.
Yes.
There'll be no accountability for it. All the people, there's going to be 9,000 new, however many new billionaires created from this, and the people are going to get nothing. But I'll go ahead and sign it
anyway.
I'll go ahead and sign it. But what a horrible day it is. Yes on the bill. I mean, it's the same.
AOC did the same thing too on the floor. She really, they didn't have press conferences. They didn't do anything to really do this. And by the way, this is the last article from antiwar.com. It's a long section. We got to get out of here because we want to get this clipped up and we want people to watch it. They'll see the first clip is an hour. Gallant tells Sullivan Israel will escalate military operations in Rafah. Right. So no matter what, they're not going to slow down anyways. They're going to go along with it. And I want to point out that, when they wanted to go after Putin, it was all good. Let's listen to the ICC, right? The ICC came back and said there's an arrest warrant for Putin. He couldn't go to one of his BRICS meetings because supposedly, I don't know if that's why he did go. And we did have a situation when Mike Lee and Matt Miller went back and forth. Let's end with that clip. Let's go to the Mike Lee and the Matt Miller clip over there. I really want to play that because it's really important. And we'll just end on that note with this section because we're already into an hour, I see, even though we had some time at the beginning there. But this is bullshit. I mean, they're all for it when the ICC says, let's go after Putin. But now they're like, no, this is ridiculous. Listen to this.
Jurisdiction for a second. Who does have jurisdiction here?
So the government of Israel has jurisdiction
Over the occupied territory.
We have jurisdiction
over Gaza, which is not entirely
They have
occupied.
jurisdiction into looking at the actions
Okay,
by their
so
military
the
personnel.
Palestinians, if they have a complaint, they have to bring it to Israeli courts.
We have jurisdiction, and
You have
with the
jurisdiction?
use of our equipment.
I'm sorry. How do you have
with the
jurisdiction?
use of our military equipment
Matt,
that we have provided?
How do you have jurisdiction?
If you look at the Leahy law, if you look
No,
at
that's not jurisdiction in a criminal process. That's
not in the criminal
jurisdiction
process, but it has to do with the determinations that we make and the policies that flow
but
from
that's
it.
not
So, but Matt, long term, you were right that we want to see.
You used to work for DOJ, Matt.
You were
Come on.
you-
There's
it
no
is-
U.S.
it
does
is
not
not-
have jurisdiction.
There are
here.
different. I wasn't referring to criminal jurisdiction, Matt. There are different ways to look at this. Long term, we agree with you that the Palestinian people should be a state that has the ability to make these determinations. But that's not where we are today. That's where we're trying to get to.
I mean, they all mimic. That's good.
ahead,
They all mimic the same language, right? That's good. They all mimic the same language. They give you a little. We agree, dude. We agree with you, Matt. Mike. Palestinians should have their own state. And then people go, oh, you know what I'm saying? The shit libs will go behind that. See, at least the administration wants them to have their own state. Yeah, but they're going to let them get away with it. In fact, they're not going to let them get away with it. They're going to fund it with weapons. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's just the same old word salad. And we like these moments. They're entertaining, at least in the moment that you can, these guys can interrupt him. This guy was great interrupting him, saying, wait a minute, what are you talking about? This doesn't, you can't say so they're not a state. You want them to be a state. So their jurisdiction is Israel and the US, which makes no sense because you're the ones who are funding their genocide. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. So,
Zero.
I mean, so these moments are nice, but they don't, where are we going from here? They're going to keep doing this. This is all theater.
Yep.